We are well at staying home. Okay, students, how are you doing? I am fine, and I hope you are well at staying home. እንደምን ቆያችሁ? ኮሮና እግዚአብሔር ያው መድኃኒዓለም ወይንም ፈጣሪያችን ካጠፋልን በሰላም እንገናኛለን። እስከዚያው ይህንን ቮይስ ሪከርድድ ሌክቸሪንግ ስታይል ለመጠቀም ተገደናል። ሶ በዚሁ for MSC in accounting finance student, we have seen the chapter introduction about the cost accounting, and in this chapter we left with the one topic, which is activity based costing. So today's session we'll see the activity based costing. So the basic difference between the activity based costing and the traditional costing method is that activity based costing allocates cost to the activity based on the activity the cost was incurred, and whereas in the traditional accounting we use a single predetermined rate to allocate the cost accounting. That's the basic difference between the traditional and activity based costing. So in the traditional costing we allocate cost to the cost object using only a single predetermined rate, whereas in the activity based costing we allocate the cost based on activity in which the cost was consumed. So there is a big difference between the activity-based costing and the traditional costing method. There is a high correlation between direct labor cost and overhead cost. So we are using the traditional costing method. There is also high correlation between the marginal and overheads in order to determine a period determine overhead cost in the traditional costing method. So there are situations or conditions to use the traditional costing method. So when to use the traditional costing method, we will use traditional costing method in order to allocate as fairly as possible the true cost of the product, and sometimes when the management has more accurate cost, better decision can be determined using the traditional costing method. So in the traditional costing method, direct materials, direct labor costs are easiest to trace through material acquisition and payroll time sheet, which is material acquisition is used to determine the amount of material used in the cost, and payroll time sheet is used to determine the direct labor cost. So using this we can determine the cost of direct labor and direct materials. So why we need to follow the new approach? This is the activity based costing. Why we need to use activity based costing? So the first step, there is a change in the manufacturing and service industries which require the new approach, and the other is the decrease in the amount of direct labor usage, and also significant increase in the total overhead cost will also one of the reasons for using the new approach known as activity based costing. So this may be inappropriate, as so sometimes there may be inappropriate to use plant wide predetermined cost, which is one single predetermined cost, which was out by traditional costing method. So it's better to use the activity based costing rather than traditional costing, because sometimes you cannot apply single rate to all the predetermined or to the overhead costs. The other is complex manufacturing process may require multiple allocation bases. So the allocation base may be applied by activity based costing. That's why we need to use activity costing method than traditional costing method. So let us go through what's meant by activity based costing and how it works. So activity based costing method is another approach, and it's other than traditional costing method to allocate manufacturing overhead costs. So an overhead cost allocation system that allocates overhead to multiple activity cost pools, and it assigns the activity cost pools to products or service by means of cost drivers. So each activity was measured by their own cost drivers. So that's the activity that we consumed or we used. So let us define some terms that we will use in the activity based costing method. So the first one is activity, which is any event, action, transaction, or work sequence that causes a cost to be incurred in producing a product or providing service. So this is known as activity or level of activity, or that's something that may result in the consumption of cost. activity cost pool, which is the overhead cost attributed to a distinct type of activity, like purchasing materials, setting up the machine, that it should be considered which consumes the activity or which results in the cost consumption. The other is cost drivers, any factors or activities that have a direct cause effect relationship with the resource consumed, which is known as the cost drivers, which እንደ አማሪክ ወጪ ማስያዎች ወይም ወጪ አምጪዎች ተብለን የምንጠራቸው ናቸው ማለት ነው። So activity based costing products consume activities and activities consume resource, which results in activity based costing. That's why we say the activity based costing is the new approach and the recent modern approach for measuring of the cost, because as you see in the slide, product consumes activities and the activities consumes resource. So which means that activity based costing is better than the traditional costing method. So the ABC, the activity based costing method, allocates overhead cost in two main stages. The first stage, overhead costs are allocated to activity cost pools. In the stage 2, the overhead costs allocated to the cost pools is assigned to products using cost drivers. So the more complex a product's manufacturing operation, the more activities and the cost drivers likely to be present. So in this two stage, we will allocate the activity based costing. So how they can be allocated? Let us see the overhead costs. Here you have the overhead costs in the purchasing department, in the storing department, in the machining department, and in the supervising department. There is activity which consumes cost. So in the purchasing department, where we will purchase the resource, then we will store the store, and we will machine or reproduce the material using the human labor, and there is supervision for the completion of the job. So the cost drivers for each. In the purchasing department, number of purchase orders will drive the cost or will measure the cost. In the storing department, amount of square footage which is used to store the resource will consume the resource, and the number of machine hours will use that cost driver to measure the cost, and number of employees supervised or number of employees in the supervision department will produce the cost. So the products are the result of these activities. That's why we will measure the cost based on the activity. So overhead cost in the activity pools or in the cost pools, the cost drivers. So ordering and receiving materials are a cost pool, setting up machines are a cost pool, machining costs pool, and assembling cost pool. We have inspection and testing as cost pool, painting cost pool, supervision is also cost pool, but there are drivers for this cost. Number of purchase orders will drive the cost in the ordering and receiving materials. Number of setups will drive the cost for setting up the machine hours will drive the cost for machining cost. Number of parts will drive the cost for assembling. Number of tests will drive the cost in the inspection and testing. Number of parts will drive the cost in the painting, and supervising will be related with direct labor hours. So this will result in the final production of the cost. That's why the activity will drive the cost. So activity based costing, the ABC does not replace an existing job order costing or processing costing, but it's the new approach. And ABC does not segregate overhead into various cost pools to produce more accurate cost information. So thus it supplements or it does not replace the traditional costing system, but it's the new approach, which is the best way of measuring the cost. If you want to measure the cost based on the activity, or your business model will have many activities in which the cost can be consumed, then you can use the ABC costing method. So let us see the example with ABC costing method, which is the new costing approach in the cost accounting. Let us see example which Atlas company produces two automotive anti-theft device, which is ስርቆት መከላከያ የአውቶሞቲቭ መኪና ስርቆት መከላከያ ይሰራል ብለን እናስባለን። So the boot, which is a high volume item with sales totaling 25,000 per year. As we said, the company produced two products, which is the boot and the club. So the boot has a high volume of sales with totaling of 25,000 per year. The club, which is the second product, a low volume item with sales totaling to 5,000 per year. Each product requires 1 hour of direct labor. Each product requires 1 hour of direct labor. Total annual direct labors is equals to 30,000, which is the total direct labor hour, and 25,000 for product 1, which is the boot, and 5,000 for product 2, the club. Direct labor hours cost is $12 per unit for each product. As you know, the product unit or the product volume is 25,000, 5,000. Then if each one requires 1 hour, then the first product will require 25,000 hours and the second one requires 5,000 hours. And direct labor cost is $12 per unit for each product. Expected annual manufacturing overhead cost is $900,000. Direct material cost, which is the boot, the direct material cost, which is the boot, which is $40 per unit, and the club direct material cost is $60 per unit. So costing under traditional costing, let us see the difference between the ABC costing and traditional costing. When I'm using the costing through traditional costing, there is manufacturing costs. As you know, there are manufacturing costs are categorized into 3: the direct materials, direct labor, and overhead. So when we are determining direct materials using the traditional costing, the boot direct material is 40 and the club is 30, as given in the previous slide. Direct labor is given for both materials, which is $12. Overhead is, as you can calculate overhead using the formula, because there are total predetermined overhead, which is $900,000 divided by total direct labor hours. Predetermined overhead rate determined through direct labor hours. So 900,000 divided by 30,000, which is equal to 30 per direct labor hour. So if, as given in the previous slide, each product requires 1 hour of direct labor, then $30 per direct labor times 1 hour per direct labor, then we will find $30 of overhead cost for each of the products, because all the product requires equal 1 hour of direct labor hours. So let us see using the activity-based method. The activity-based method, where there are 4 steps of activity-based costing. In the first step, you have to identify and classify the major activities and allocate manufacturing overhead cost to the appropriate cost pools. This is the first step. You have to identify and classify the major activities. As you know, activity-based costing method uses the activity to allocate the cost. So you have to identify activities first. Then you have to allocate overhead cost to the appropriate cost pools in which the activity cost drivers can be measured. Then the second step, you have to identify the cost drivers. Cost driver that has a strong correlation to the costs in the cost pool. Identify the cost driver that has a strong correlation to the costs in the cost pool. In the third step, compute the overhead rate for each cost pool. Then assign overhead costs for each cost pool to products using the overhead rates. So let us go through the example. We have activity cost pools. Setting up the machine, machining, and inspection. There are 3 activities. In each, there is estimated overhead cost. Setting up the machine, $300,000. Machining, $500,000. Inspection is $100,000. Total of $900,000 overhead cost. Then activity cost pools. The first activity is setting up the machine, machining, and inspection. Cost drivers, number of setups. in the setting up machines, machine hours in the machining cost pools, number of inspection in the inspecting department. So expected use of cost drivers per activity, the cost drivers per activity, these are the given. So number of setups, the cost driver for the expected use of cost for drivers per activity, which is 1500, the machine hours 50,000, and number of inspection 2000. Then we have to activity based overhead rate, which is using the formula, this simple formula, estimated overhead per activity divided by expected use of cost drivers per activity. So we have each cost pool is setting up the machines, machining, and then inspection. So estimated overhead cost in each department was given 300,000 in the setting up a machine, 100,000 in the machining, and 100,000 in inspecting. So expected use of cost drivers per activity is also given. So here dividing the 300,000 to 1,500, then we will get 200 for setup. That's the same for the machining, which is dividing 500,000 into 50, then we will get 10 per machine hour. Then they are dividing 100,000 to 2,000 in inspection, then we will get $50 per inspection. These are activity based overhead rates. So let us determine the cost. Setting up a machine, there are a number of setups, which are 1,500 setups. Then, as you know, the boot has 500 setups, and the glaive has 1,000 setups. Then in the machining department, machine hours, from 50,000 machine hours, 30,000 machine hours were used for the boot, and 20,000 were used for the clap. In the inspection, number of inspection, there are 2,000 inspections were made. From this, 500 was used in the boot and 1,500 was used in the clap. So let us go to the cost allocation. So when we are allocating the cost, setting about the machine, we have cost, expected cost driver, which is 500. In the boot, activity based overhead rate is 200, as we find in the previous slide. So 500 multiplied by 200, we will get the cost assigned, which is 100,000. And this 100,000, and in the club, we said that the expected cost driver is 1,000 and the activity based overhead is 200. So 1,000 multiplied by 200 is 200,000. And in the machining department, in the boot, there is 30,000 cost driver, 30,000 hours of cost driver, and activity based overhead rate is $10. So 30,000 hours times $10, which is 300,000. And in the club, we have 20,000 of hours, machine hours, and there is $10 per hour. Then we will get 200,000. And in the inspection department, in the boot, there is 500 hours, 500 inspections, and there is a cost of 50 for inspection. Then we'll get 25,000. And in the club, the 1,500 inspections were made, and each cost is 50. Then we'll get 25,000. Then the summation will get the total cost assigned to each of the product. 425,000 is for the boot, and the remaining 475,000 is for the club, for total of 900,000 indirect cost was allocated. Then units produced 25,000 in the boot as given the earlier slide, 5,000 in the club. Then the unit cost is 17 for the boot and 95 for the club. So anyway, summarizing the total cost for unit, direct material given 40/40, both in the traditional cost as well as in the overhead cost. So direct material is 40 in the boot using traditional costing, as well as the same for ABC 40. Direct labor is 12, the same, but there is a difference between overhead. Overhead using the traditional costing method is $30 for the boot, but usually you are using ABC costing, it is $17. So the total cost per unit is 82 under ABC the traditional costing and 69 under ABC costing. So the difference is when we are converting or when we are using activity-based costing than traditional costing, the traditional costing method will overstate $30 in each single unit. So the activity-based costing is better for business models which are based on the activities or more detailed activities. So in the club, transaction costing $30 direct material for the BC as well as $30. Direct labor is the same for both, but there is a difference between overhead cost allocation. Overhead cost using traditional is 30, but when I'm using activity-based costing, overhead cost allocated to the club using ABC is $95. So regarding this, when you are doing traditional costing, the club total unit cost is equal to $72. When you are using ABC costing, the club total unit cost is $137. So when you are seeing that the traditional costing method will understate the unit cost of the club by $65. So this is the difference, as you saw how they differ by the activity or especially by the allocation of overhead costs. So the basic difference between the traditional and ABC costing system is the way how they allocate overhead costs. So this is basically different. So the benefits of activity-based costing, why we need to use the new approach, which known as the activity-based costing system. So more accurate product costing through use of more cost pools to assign overhead cost, because the big rationale is the cost for each activity should be assigned based on the activity for which the resource or the cost consumed. That's the best way. The other is to enhance the control over overhead costs. In order to control overhead costs for each activity, it's the best way to use the activity-based costing system. And it's also for better management decision, you have to use activity-based costing system than the traditional costing system. There is also limitation, as you know, everything has its own advantage and disadvantage. So the limitations of activity-based costing. So the limitation is they can be expensive to use regarding the cost-benefit relationship analysis of the accounting behavior or the accounting pattern. Some arbitrarily allocations may continue because of the use of activity-based costing. So these are the limitations. But with notwithstanding with the limitations, it's the best way of allocating the cost rather than the traditional method. Use of ABC when one or more of the following exist. You can use ABC when one of or more of the following conditions will exist. First, products differ greatly in volume. When you are manufacturing two or more products which are greatly differ in volume, or manufacturing complexity in your manufacturing plant or in business. Products lines are numerous, diverse, then you can use ABC. Or if the product lines requires different degrees of support service, then you can use ABC costing method. Or overhead costs are a significant portion of the total cost, then it's better to use ABC costing, or better to allocate overhead cost based on the activity in which the cost was incurred. If there is significant change in manufacturing process or number of products, it's better to use ABC costing, and the managers ignore data from existing systems and instead use bootleg costing data, then it's better to use ABC costing. So also if one of more of these conditions will satisfy, then you can use ABC costing method because it's a better way to allocate the cost. So students, thank you for your attention. This is all about chapter 1, and the remaining portion as per our discussion before this pandemic, which is the remaining part of chapter 1, which is activity-based costing as introduction to the cost accounting. So this is the end of the chapter, not the book, so you have to continue the reading. Thank you. አመሰግናለሁ።